goes, wow, you cost our
Exactly.
community billions of dollars in potential losses. I would be screaming that from the rooftops. I know I've posted that on SEC on Twitter myself, like, hey, like you guys cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. And
Thousand
has
percent.
nothing to do with Richard Hart. It just has to do with their attack, and they're not accountable. The guy in charge of regulation is actually leaving right now. So
Jeez.
is there any accountability? He's going to be gone,
Just
right?
imagine where things would
Gensler might
be.
be gone. I think
Like,
things are going to get bullish in crypto if Gensler's gone. He could leave. He could
right.
leave in 2 months, three. I don't know. Richard Hart could totally win this, and he could leave.
I mean, it's
So
pretty. You could look at where crypto was and how we were above SAC rate. How in a time period from once it got sued or they filed a lawsuit, Bitcoin what 4x went from 15 to 60, and so
yeah,
then following Hart's law, dude, we could be 4x times our SAC rate if it
yeah.
wasn't for them. Yeah, I bet you all that
Yeah, we
stuff.
probably would have been. Yeah, we probably would have. I know people wanted to cash out, so we probably wouldn't have
It would probably
100x
chase us some
immediately, but
dips. Yeah,
yeah, we would have had, probably a good 10x or going off of the anyway. It's woulda, coulda, shoulda. Everybody in crypto got sued. I mean, Coinbase is still in lawsuits. XRP, they're trying to do it again. So I guess it's in the
really.
game.
I didn't
Yeah,
hear
it's
that.
like they're Kraken. I mean, there's so many lawsuits going on that it's like everybody's who's anybody is getting sued. So it's kind of like, I guess, I hope our community just gets over it and says it doesn't matter what happens with the court case because it's only involving Richard Hart, and bygones be bygones. As far as you buying an asset on it's like a secondary sale. So they've already said that that's fine. Like most of us have bought Hex or Pulse on Uniswap or somewhere similar like Pulsex. So that's not an offering of a security. It's a decentralized trade between two peer-to-peers, basically. So there's a good precedents that have been set with some of this. I really I don't know. It's like even if he has to pay a fine or something, it's like who cares? It's like that'll be bullish. So it's hard to see like what would happen that would actually be detrimental to the price at this point. Most of the sellers who got scared sold. Like no matter what happens to Richard Hart, I'm just gonna hold my coins. Like I'm not gonna sell just because of what the SEC says, right? Come on.
Right. I mean, that's me. I mean, dude, I'm locked in for 15.
Yeah,
5555. That includes Pulse. I don't even get any yield off that, but I'm still locked in.
holding it. Yeah, I mean we're
Yeah. Who played that? That's too good.
we're
I
getting
like sound
bigger.
effects. That's
We're
great.
getting bigger as a community. It's like stakers went up to 130,000. So there was a time when we had this issue of people weren't staking for a while, and now it's picking up again. So I think for the most part, people are pretty happy. And if you see the only missing piece right now for us is probably Ethereum, not Bitcoin, because a lot of even some of our big players like Godwales or let's say somebody like Buck from Fiat, they got a lot of ETH, and so does Richard Hart. And so I think if we want to see like a really nice bull market, I think we should hope for ETH to go up, 4, 5, 10K, whatever ETH's gonna do. If we could see that shifts to a little bit more bullish ETH, I think that's kind of the final nail in the coffin of giving us like a really powerful bull market. And it's kind of annoying because we're trying to leave Ethereum and we're trying to do our own thing, but we're also trying to like extract value from them. So we're kind of doing it at the same time, and it's gonna play out. Like ETH is gonna do fine, I think. But yeah, it's just we're kind of like we can do a decent 10x without ETH doing anything, but to really get pumping, I think on our charts, we probably need ETH to do all right. Unless, I mean, the other questionable factor would be a lot of adoption or some magical being has other wallets that we don't know about and uses those, right? Which is also possible. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back when Richard was doing his podcasts and YouTube shows all the time, all I remember him ever saying was ETH was going to flip Bitcoin. So I'm kind of surprised to see because I can remember every low in 2021, and I remember ETH getting right to
It was close.
900 something, and to see them barely over 2x right now is a little. You thought they'd be doing a little bit more than what it is, but what you're saying, I mean, it all kind of works in synergy. And before the hex days, I mean, I used to put the dot ETH because you needed ETH to get hex, ehex, and that's how it. And it's still the same synergy with both ecos.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually we won't be as much, but I think for now, especially with that stack wallet buying 170,000 ETH, I kind of signal people to like, hey, our ecosystem's not going down unless the whole
Right.
of crypto gets nuked, right? It was kind of like an insurance policy, right? It was saying, well, you guys think like we're on our own and oh great, how is this going to happen? Well, easily, if ETH goes up, we're going to go up. It's guaranteed at this point. But yeah, we have enough stables. We can do a good, 10x without any of that. And, this is whether it happens, towards the end of this year where we get a good pump, we're doing it right now. If we continue it to the end of this year, X can be 10 cents this year. It's not any problem whatsoever. It's just a matter of just some people just stop selling or they just run out of X and then it happens, because we have enough buyers. So I'm pretty patient about it. Like I said, I'm taking my hex and I'm just going to stake it out 15 years in a couple weeks here because I don't need to sell for this bull market hex anyways. And this, selling at a penny or 10 pennies or so, it's just not so interesting for me. I think hex can do a lot better in the future, so I'm going to push it out. And you can see a lot of people doing the same thing. So I'm not recommending it for other people. I'm saying if you got liquid hex, maybe you do want to take some profits. But I also have the Pulsex and the Pulse and Ink and stuff. So I'm like, well, if I do take profit, it'll probably be in Pulsex or Ink or Pulse. So I could just roll with the hex a little longer.
Speaking of hex, because I remember we used to back in 2021, man, I would argue with you about this or question it, and forever in all the chats and all the stuff, people would be like, and this is before Pulse launch. Richard would always go, I'm not going to tell you what to buy. The market will decide between EHEX and PHEX. And he said that forever. And he said the market will decide. And I can just remember it like yesterday. And I would say, shouldn't we all just move to our own chain? What's the need for EHEX? So when he kind of tweeted that out, 6 or 7 months ago, and everyone kind of accused him of flipping everybody or tanking the EHEX deal when he said that for years before Pulse launched. How did you feel about that as a hexkin that he kind of did what I was saying that whole time is like, why even have EHEX? Shouldn't we bridge it all to PHEX at that point?
Yeah, you were definitely right about
I was
that one.
stoked.
Yeah, I mean, if I don't know if you were in the chats during like Pulse launch a little bit, but some of us took like our eHex and we swapped it all for Hex on Pulse Chain, and I did really well. I mean, I got like the ratio is 6 to 1. So I was able to take my eHex and get 6 times as much hex on Pulse Chain during the beginning of the launch of Pulse. So I was really happy, and that was actually right what you were saying, right? Like we should bridge it over. We should move over to Pulse Chain. So I personally did that, but recently I've actually grabbed eHex as well, just because it's not going anywhere, and there's a certain price point where the liquidity pool can survive on Pulse Chain. It's like we got like $1 million in liquidity for eHex. So at 0.003 price, yeah, you could go lower, but then people would probably buy it up, So I feel like it's kind of fun to have some as more of a trade than a stake because I already made my ladder on it's on Ethereum, and who knows, hopefully I have enough ETH to end stake it. but but the problem is you can't, it's not like a dictatorship. Our community is like each individual player didn't agree with Richard Hart and kept the problem is they would buy eHex and not Hex, and they kept doing it. And people like me were just like, well, I mean, you can keep your eHex, you don't have to trade it. I did, but you don't have to, but you can keep it. But why do you want to keep buying the eHex? Because it's cheaper. So they were selling the Hex and buying the eHex, and they kept doing it for months and months. And it was like, this is actually dragging us all down, right? Kind of like what you're saying. Like if we all focused on Hex on Pulse Chain would go up a lot. And we're seeing that happen. It's actually pulling up EX. So if Hex on Pulse Chain does good, people will buy EHEX because they'll see, wow, Hex is 2 cents and EHEX is 0.002. No, they shouldn't be that different. Okay, let's buy some EHEX now. So it will pull it up, but it was like the cart before the horse. They were trying to say, let me get the cheapest coin possible, and a lot of people got wrecked. I mean, we're talking people put in 30 grand, 50 grand, and it went down 90% again and again on EX, which is really sad,
Oh,
you
dude, there's
know.
still 40-cent Hexicans, like
Yeah,
thousands of them, if you really think about it. And if they never bought again back in the end of
yeah. Oh yeah.
2021.
I mean, I'm a prime candidate. You know, the first hex I bought was 12 cents. It went up. I bought all the way up, all the way down. So I feel that pain. You know, I'm hoping I staked it, so I'm hoping the stakes work out in the long run. But it takes a really tough character to keep buying when it goes to zero almost, you know. But yeah, well, the thing about Hex is it's so sticky that people will leave, but that doesn't stop it from keep going. You know, like, yeah, sure, if you leave and you stakes, well, that helps everybody else. You know, like, okay, great, more for us. We don't need a huge community. We could have a small one, and it could actually work out great.
Yeah, I think once this SEC gets cleared, if election and it's Trump back in office, I think we could get back to a little bit of a pumpage coming up. I
If
think I think I
yeah,
think some things have to happen, but I think we're close.
the money is going up. So I think Trump getting elected helps a lot, but the fact that the government around the world, like different governments, are making money again, printing money, because back in 2022 to 23, they were reducing the money supply, so people weren't being as speculative. But now we're just starting to create money, and of course, that's not great for, you know, the U.S. economy necessarily to just create more and more money, but it actually helps the economy to keep things moving. So whether it's crypto, stocks, we're probably going to get a pump. If you look at 1995, when they started to reduce the rates and we didn't have a recession, so this is the hope, right? You reduce the rates and you don't have a recession. If that plays out, which right now, that's what it seems like, because there's still like the job creation was still up this past Friday. So people were speculating, hey, we're not going in recession, but we're going to get lower rates. If we can pull that move off, the stock market went up. I think it's like 40% in 18 months, something like that. And that was before crypto existed, so we can't really compare it necessarily, but it generally is going to drag up, especially now that Bitcoin's trading with stocks like crazy and Ethereum. They're kind of following the stock market. So I think that's a big factor. It's actually bigger than the presidency, but because I think either president is going to keep creating more money. And I think the Fed's going to keep reducing the interest rate. So as long as that plays out, it's bullish. It's really bullish as long as we don't go into a catastrophic recession. But even then, you get a recession, the last 6 months, maybe a year, those are the best buying opportunities. I mean, you remember COVID 2020 flash crash. Bitcoin went to 3.5K. ETH was down in the 20 or 150 bucks. And if you were buying that dip, you were a genius, you know. So I'm not scared of recessions one bit. I actually think that it's a great opportunity if you have some cash. But yeah, the court case, it could drag on beyond the. So two things could happen, right? They could throw it out. They could, you know, they could say this is nonsense, but if they drag it out, it could last longer than the bull market. So I think as long as the community's positive, as long as Richard Art's out there tweeting and fighting the SEC and being positive, and maybe if he's like, hopefully, magical wallets out there bringing in $10 million here and there and buying up the charts. If that's happening during the bull, then we'll be okay regardless of this court case. I mean, I hope it just, you know, resolves mid 2025 and they just say this is ridiculous, or they say, hey, Richard, pay $12 million, and he just laughs and he pays it. I mean, either way, it's like, okay, there's no way he's going to jail on a civil court case because this is not a criminal, it's just a civil lawsuit. So I wish we could do a class action lawsuit against the SEC
Oh,
and
100%.
ask, you know, like we're the ones who got damaged by $500
Thousand.
million.
Oh,
Like, come on. I
and
mean, we had a
imagine the amount of
community.
people that get behind that and create a collective to do that. Get after their ass. I mean, dude, it's unreal. And the number, like, and everything that's happened since that happened. I don't know. I know it's been over a year. I think, I don't know. Whenever that they
Yeah,
filed the
July.
lawsuit.
Yep. It was like
Um,
July 2023. Yep. So it's been over
think
a
of
year.
think about the number one driving force of the community that's had to take a step back for legal reasons is Richard Hart. And think about when it was 2021 and he in the beginning of the year he only had like 40,000 followers on Twitter. And
Yeah.
then within a year's time he was up to 200,000 and he's rolling and he's doing YouTube video and live shows every week and the whole community was just growing. He's our leader, and then he's had to been gone for a year. I mean, when that gets dropped and he goes back to being the influencer he is and the leader of the community, and he's making content again because content's how you. I mean, that dude, that's how I found Hex, and
Yeah,
when
me
and
too. I
it
mean,
was a
we found him
YouTube
on
video.
YouTube.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and when in live shows and people retweeting, hey, Richard's doing a new show, hey, he's making this claim about Bitcoin, calling the top on the day, and all these different things. Like that's so when we start talking about variables, just like anything that ever hits, the stars kind of have to align. I think that's just a big part of it too. Not only does the case need to get dropped, he needs to come back bigger and better than ever with his productions, and this thing will take off. I know it will, and but it just these things have to happen.
Yeah, everybody forgot about that fact that, hey, you get Richard on a video screen, and the good thing is it's been enough of a, you know, time that people are going to freak out, right? Like in 2021, some people were getting sick of him on YouTube almost, right? They were like, oh, the stinking flashy clothes, and like he's showing me another watch. This is so stupid or whatever.
Haters.
And yeah, it's like 3 years later, he comes out and rebuilds, regrows, and raises up the community, makes his following up to 1 million. You know, I remember when it was 40,000. It was, you
Yeah.
know, it was like, yeah, he was just a nobody on Twitter, basically, and he pushed it up so quick that we really thought Hex was going to multi-dollars and we were going to be viral. But the X factor we have right now is the Richard Hart comeback that everybody's discounting, and that's the Hex price, right? That Pulse price.
Yep.
It's discounted the fact that Richard would ever do anything again, and we're floundering with no leadership, and you get rug pulls, and you get an influencer trying to make their own coin, and he pulls a little bit of the community, and somebody pulls a little bit more. Well, Richard Hart's watching all of that, and he's seeing like, okay, you're getting rid of your pulse. This is going to make it easier for me.
Yep.
When you have less, I can make the charts go to infinity. This is great. You know, like sell all
Exactly.
your
Keep
eggs at
keep
zero
burning.
zero 0.02. Go for it, guys, because it's going to be $1. You're going to be crying. But
And when he
I think
I was gonna say when he comes back, it's gonna be like The Rock coming back to professional wrestling. The pop is gonna be heard around the
yeah,
crypto community, baby. He's back.
totally. And Richard live streaming, that's like our sleeping giant because that was his secret
Oh,
weapon. And like he's not doing it right now. And I think he quit live streaming mostly because of the court
yeah.
case. But also, I think another factor was I think he got like celebrity e streamer fatigue because he had just started jumping up the production quality and switching to 8K, and it became like a hassle and setting up the lights, and it became a lot of work. And so I think he's taking a lot of time off, and I hope if he comes back streaming, the technology is going to be a little bit better and the streams won't have as much lag and stuff. And I hope it's better than ever. Like I hope the quality and the crowds, I hope everything's just going to be better than it ever was.
he's been working out. He comes out, he's all buff.
He's on
Yeah.
HGH, just looking
Totally.
ripped. Yeah, dude, it was just so even if you weren't a Hexagon or in the community, I mean, anybody could just listen and just understand how smart this guy is. And a lot of times, it wasn't even about cryptos; it's life lessons. and
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, I
It
think you said it
changes.
best. It's kind of a secret weapon that we're not really factoring in these variables for this next pump.
Yeah, he changes how the community thinks and how the community plans. And he kind of does it on Twitter right now a little bit with some of his
Oh,
thought-provoking stuff. You know, it still hits, but it's mysterious. So the other question is, does he become the shadowy, mysterious figure that's controlling like behind the scenes a little bit more? But then he does like streams once every quarter or every month or so. You know, he doesn't have to do it like he did it exactly, but he could still grow and build the community even once a month. You know what I mean? It'd be like, all right, this is our special stream for 2 hours or 3 hours. And yeah, it's gonna. Okay, so when Pulsechain launched, there was that one wallet that moved 42,000 Bitcoins, wrapped Bitcoin. It was like earning yield on Ethereum. And before, so there was that window between when Pulse launched and the community knew about it. So nobody knew Pulse even launched yet. And these activities were happening on Pulse Chain. Yeah, it was 42,000 Bitcoins, which if you do the math
jeez.
on that, it's like, yeah, it's like almost $3 billion, right? So although people are focusing on Ethereum and stuff like that, like you have to understand this guy's got access to capital that we don't even comprehend. And in our charts, if you put in 10 million or $50 million, we're going to be really happy if we put in 50 mils into the hex chart because it only takes a few millions and we're all happy.
No doubt.
Dude, Gary Gensler's already getting ratioed pretty hard by Hexaco on his
Hexologist,
tweets.
yeah, Hexologist has done
Yeah, Hexo.
ratioing. Yeah, he's done a few funny tweets right under Gary Gensler, and it's like eventually these politicians are going to start accepting Pulse in their campaigns, you know, and when it's happening, right? Like I liked Trump when he hated crypto. Now he loves crypto. The world has changed and it's changing in our favor. And the old news is going to get washed out of Washington. It takes time because of all these, like, man, they're so connected, but eventually they phase out. And that's the way the world is going. And actually, I think the government likes it to be digital and to be crypto. That's always been my theory is they want us to get rid of cash. It's a war against cash. So cash is the anonymous coin, basically. You can use cash, you don't have to pay tax. You don't have to, you know, all the criminal activities people do with cash. There's trailer loads of cash going to Mexico and back. So that's what the government wants to get rid of. And to get rid of it, they want us to all be digital folks, digital money, and crypto is the cool way to get us there and accept giving up our paper anonymity that we love and don't love anymore, right? So they're making it happen. They haven't sold all their Bitcoin for a reason, right? The government. They still got 200,000 Bitcoins, you know, in themselves. So that's, you know, I think they're bullish.
Ethereum. Look, I think we're going to be making up a lot of ground real quick here in the next couple of years.
The only way is if Ethereum becomes bigger than Bitcoin, which it's not looking like. I don't know if it's going to happen at this point. I always predicted it would. You know, ETH would flip Bitcoin, but at the rate the Bitcoin community versus the Ethereum community is going, and how so many projects forked, moved on, and made their own chains, it seems like splintering comes from not Bitcoin anymore. The splintering comes from ETH, and people splinter off of ETH more than not. So it kind of cuts their gains, which means maybe ETH never does. Maybe Bitcoin is um, the loudest, strongest maxi community that can maintain supremacy. But eventually, probably X could outdo Bitcoin, though. We'll see. I mean, it's a crazy idea, but in the long run, you never know what could happen. Like all the big things die eventually, right? Like IBMs of the world, the Kodaks of the world, the what's a good search engine that we used to use? Alta Vista or something.
Yahoo. In
Yeah.
the very beginning, Google wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, he could stop that right now. I mean, Rackham probably tried hard, and he's wiped out his Pulsex. So At this point, I mean, it could happen, right? I think Godwell has 500 billion or something. He has a big bag of Pulsex, but for the most part, it would be hard for the long term to keep Pulsex not trending stronger than Pulse, thanks to the buy and burn, especially when Pulsex is still below Pulse. It's like still below SAC. There's a lot of trading going on, so there's a lot of burning of the Pulsex. Especially with Pulsex being below fours, it's a lot of people don't want to sell because they sacked and got it higher. Yeah, I'm thinking you can want the degen or you can want the coin that makes the most gains, right? So that's the other problem people make is they want a play that's going to be like a quick pop flyer, and you're like, well, just because it's a vulnerable asset doesn't mean it's worth accumulating because most of those go to zero. So that's why it's so easy to buy Hex because it's like it's going to be around. Or PulseX, that almost certainly will probably get to 1-to-1 with Pulse. So you're kind of gaining 50% more in Pulse just by buying it now. That's pretty cool.
Yes, and just being able to sell for
They probably have a 5 or
for a
10%
good,
tax on it. Tax coins.
yeah, 5 or 10% tax, or it could be a bug and goes to zero or whatever. But I think for a good gainer right now, PulseX is primed up for a pretty huge move, I think, this month. And then if you need to add some degeneracy sprinkled in there, just put some leverage on it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like I don't hold any meme coins or anything like that. No crazy meme coins. I do hold the core tickers, so I was just seeing what you guys were, thinking.
We're really hardcore. I mean, if you look at the people on the speakers panels, we're like looking at Richard Hart tickers nonstop and probably trying to accumulate more of them weekly. So that's kind of the people up here at the moment.
We are
But
heavy hands, as heavy as they come.
Yep, fanatics. And I'm really into the core, especially the core stuff. I mean, I like crypto, but I'm really into the core stuff because, like, I'm dumping my entire paycheck, any penny I
yeah,
can spare, out of basically every single paycheck from now on for probably the past 5 years and another 5 years into the future. So I'm like a fanatic.
yeah, I just sent over a few more ETH and it's going straight into those. Because the thing is, when you invest too much money, you don't want to be stuck in something. You don't want to be the big fish in the small pond, basically. And that's what a lot of crypto is. It's like you get stuck and you lose all your money that way too fast. So there's
Gunther,
millions of cryptos. Yeah, you become Gunther. You're basically you buy up a chart, you buy up all these coins, and then you can never sell them, and they go to zero. So I don't know. I guess you could sit around and try to find the coin that comes out and buy it and sell it within 2 seconds, but that's a lot of work.
And risk.
I mean, are you going to put in $50? For me, it's not even worth my time to like, oh, I need to buy $50 of this coin, $10 of that, $20 of that. It's like, oh my goodness, keeping track of all that stuff and hope that one of them hits. And it's like, I get it. People like to do lottery stuff. I'm like a little bit older and want to do investing. So I just invest just, every week, just grab more. And eventually it works out. Like Hex will hit, it hits a lot harder than when you put in $10,000. It hits harder than if you put in $20 in a meme.
What do you guys think? End of the year, end of the year predictions are for core tickers. Obviously, it's all speculation, but
I'm on Pumptober schedule right now. I prophesized that Pumptober was going to be in full effect on Pulsechain, and that prediction is going great. And I think it's going to continue to do good for the rest of the month or close to it.
do you
The
think?
best part is people missed the bottom, so people are waiting to play catch up, which means if we do drop just a little bit, there's a lot of people that want to get in so they can save face when we get this grind up. Like Bitcoin dominance is still 58%. So all these big, there's some altcoin big names out there with 500K million followers. They're like, we're into altcoin season. It's like, well, hate to break it to you guys, but Bitcoin actually should probably go up some more, and then it should start to trend down towards the alts, and it hasn't happened yet. Like Bitcoin's still hovering in the 60Ks. It hasn't really made its breakout move. So if we get a good altcoin season, we're probably going to need to see Bitcoin to show a little bit more leadership, and then it favors towards ETH and Solana's and everybody else. But so we'll see if that plays out, because if you're thinking 2024 is similar to 2020, it pretty much started around now, and it just kept ramping up through the new year, right? And it was just shocking, right? When you start to see like, oh wait, it's not stopping, it keeps going and going. And if that's the case, then we got a good year to go of a bull market. And yeah, that puts altcoin season more towards the middle end of next year, actually, which people aren't even saying. It's weird. They're trying to like make their own timelines, but we haven't seen Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin's topped. Let's put it that. If it did top, this is the first time in existence Bitcoin topped before the Bitcoin cycle, which would be so crazy.
Hex is the way. What is up, brother?
Hey, AJ. Yeah, we're
Hot.
doing good. Yes,
You know,
sir.
you know me just
You've
sitting
been
with,
busy.
yeah, you know me just sitting with the bag. But I wanted to ask you, talk about the variables because you just brought up that timeline and think about it. That's election period. That's COVID. Both these things, elections coming up. I think that's going to affect the economy. But two, with the variables and what the end of the year and the every 3 year cycle that should be coming up and the stuff y'all are saying, but I haven't heard you talk much about how big a variable the SEC case. We're talking like that's just no factor, like we think we're going to win that or whatnot. But when's that supposed to end and those type of things? Because I keep up with all the charts and everything, but I think that's just as big a variable with all this other stuff.
Yeah, the beginning of this year, we saw Pulsex really ramp up past stack rates. And that was basically Richard Hart yelling at the SEC to say, in your face, I got 11 lawyers and my coins are doing just fine. And he pumped the charts like crazy, right? And that was basically, that's what it was, right? Like basically, he controlled the whole thing and he pushed it up. And right now, what we're seeing as our community is we are individually pushing us up from the lows. We're like creeping it up in anticipation of the potential for the Stack Wallet, RH, some big whales to do the same thing in regards to the court case. That's kind of what people are trying to front run. And whether that's a good or smart idea or not, I think the assets were so low anyways that it works. Whether it does end up getting pumped into the end of October by Whale or Richard Hart Wallet, I mean, it very well could happen. People assume that we should be above SAC rate for a court case to make us look good. I don't know if that has to happen, but it's a good narrative that's playing out right now, and we're all kind of pushing it and making that work, whether we fully get there or not. As long as
Why do you think
I
that
think
makes that look good for the case that it's above the sack? Just so I understand it, not missing it. I could guess
uh,
why I think that looks good, but I just wanted to hear it from you.
I mean, if the lawyers argue that everybody got a bad deal, it kind of makes Richard Hart look bad. Whether they can say that we invested or not, that's questionable, right? He could say no, nobody had expectation. But if they push the narrative of, hey, you had investors, they invested, everything got nuked, it looks like you took all their money. It's like even though it's not really true, they're going to push that as a negative. So instead, you could have a happy community that loves Pulsechain, that shows up to the court case happy and supporting Richard Hart, and then we also have everybody else buying the chart. So it's like we're all working together as a community. It's not just Richard Hart, and then we are above the point of anybody getting a bad deal in this, whether you call a SAC phase an ICO or not. Everybody would be potentially quote unquote in profit if they didn't do something stupid like trade or sell their bags too early.